So without further ado, let me invite the next speaker, Alp Aslandogan, he's the Executive Director, Alliance for Shared Values, based in New Jersey and New York, and very much a part of this movement. So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you all. I want to thank the host, Jindal University and Indialogue Foundation for giving us this opportunity to meet with friends and make new friends, and hopefully expand our network of friendship with the goal, ideal being a friendship of all humans. I will be talking about pillars of environmental consciousness in Fethullah Gülen Hoca Efendi's Discourse and the practice of the Hizmet Movement. The first point I want to make is that there is an alarming trend in any measure of environmental health around the world, and having come from the city of Delhi, that we see the signs of that locally here in our own backgrounds. We see all the signs, but the signs in the world are really horrific. I think some generations from now, our children or grandchildren will look back and say, you were burning 100 million barrels of oil and 400 billion cubic feet of natural gas and releasing the gases into the atmosphere. Were you suicidal? If you were suicidal, why did you also try to end our lives? I think they will be puzzled by the behavior of humanity at this time. What is more alarming is that the amount of oil and gas that is in store that can be burned is vastly much more than what is being burned right now. So if the humanity doesn't change course, the future doesn't look very bright. So we see the signs in the extinction of species. We see it in the decline of the ecosystems, the transformation of the land for the worse, the use of the fresh water, the dropping of the coral reefs. Wherever you look at, the signs are very alarming. Now, this conference is about Hizmet Movement, so I thought it's appropriate to give, just say a few words about the Hizmet Movement. It has been, and it still is, an education movement primarily. It started in Turkey in the 60s when the country was suffering through major economic and social problems. In a matter of 4 or 5 decades, the participants reached over 1 million, mostly still in Turkey, but increasingly out of Turkey, thanks to the persecution of the present Turkish government. There are 500 plus education institutions still active around the world in over 100 countries. The ones in Turkey have been shut down, and most of these institutions are grade schools, and there are several universities. In addition to the educational institutions, there are major humanitarian relief associations and dialogue organizations. And my organization, the Alliance for Shared Values, is an association of dialogue institutes in the United States. Since we are in India, I also wanted to mention that Mr. Gülen was the recipient of the Gandhi King Ikeda Peace Award in 2015, given by the Morehouse College. If you are sociologically oriented or anthropologically, I recommend Dr. Weller's books, which are open access, or Dr. Helen Rose Iba on the movement. John is already here. You can speak to him about his book. If you are religiously oriented, late Reverend Thomas Michel wrote a book on Gülen's thought, and late Martin Marty also edited a book on the movement. Now, the first point I want to underline in Gülen's discourse on environment is that he regards the safeguarding of the environment as a fundamental duty for Muslims. Now, Muslims constitute roughly 1/4 of the world's population. So, ecological consciousness among Muslims objectively is a very critical topic. Drawing from Islamic sources for Muslims will be a moving dynamic for Muslims, and if every tradition can do the same for their followers, that is going to be a uniting point, a shared value for these different traditions. So Gülen says that protecting the environment and preserving and safeguarding of the ecological balance are among the fundamental duties of a Muslim. To emphasize this more, I found this saying very interesting. He says, I view the harming or deforming of the earth no less of a sin than changing the revealed books of God. And this is linked to his view of the creation, the universe, as a created book of God versus the revealed books of God. Now, in his discourse, we see several pillars that underlie an environmental consciousness for Muslims. The first is a reinterpretation of the concept of agency, what Dr. Paul mentioned as vicegerency, and then exploring the responsibility for humans to explore and understand the nature, seeing heaven not only a place to try to reach to, but as a model to shape our world. The responsibility to protect all life, which in India we see beautiful examples of this consciousness. The relationship of faith and cleanliness, the avoidance of waste, and finally, preserving the integrity between our beliefs and actions. I'll try to give some examples of verses and the prophetic sayings that underlie these interpretations. Human beings are described as vicegerents on earth in multiple verses of the Quran, and traditionally this has been understood as the capacity and the authorization to act on earth. As vicegerents, humans are authorized and are capable of acting on earth. What is missed in Gülen's understanding is that it also implies responsibility. Because vicegerent, the word vicegerent, khalif or khalifa in Arabic, means that you are not acting by yourself. You are acting according to a reference. And that reference, according to Gülen, is the creation of the world by Allah, by God. Therefore, humans have the responsibility to study, to understand the earth as it is created by God and take it as a reference to preserve its original beauty. So with authorization and power comes responsibility, a redefinition or review of the definition of the concept of vicegerency. So with this responsibility to take God's creation as reference comes other responsibilities. For instance, that means you need to protect the diversity of the plant and animal species because that is how they are created by God. Also, to preserve the ecosystems of these animals and plants because they live in these ecosystems. When ecosystems are destroyed, that they cannot continue to live. If you are not protecting the ecosystems, you cannot claim to be protecting the lives. And striving to create living spaces for people without causing harm to ecosystems. And it can be expanded even more. And now the second point, or another pillar that Gülen mentions is interesting. In the Quran, there are depictions of paradise, many, many depictions of paradise. And this has been historically understood to be just encouraging believers to strive during this world for spiritual growth. Therefore, they end up in paradise. And then there is a particular verse that talks about believers of whoever died with an ounce of faith in their heart. When they are in heaven, they will be offered fruits, and they will say, this is similar, this is like what we had on earth. And this was interpreted classically as, if you are very new to a pleasure, to a taste, then initially you may not appreciate it because it is very new to you. It takes a little bit of time to get used to a taste or pleasure to appreciate it fully. This has been the classical interpretation. But Gülen looks at this from a different angle. He says that if we corrupt the fruits and the vegetables in this life, in this earth, they will not resemble the heaven ones. The ones in the heaven will not resemble the earth ones anymore. So we need to actually try to make or preserve the original beauty, the taste, the smell, everything of the fruits and vegetables in this world, in this life. So just another way of looking at a Quranic verse. Another responsibility that comes with the definition of the vicegerency is preserving the balance on earth. And the Quran references the balance in so many verses. I just picked one from the Surah Rahman, the Compassionate, where the word balance is used in 3 consecutive verses. He raised the sky with this harmony and set the balance, so that you may learn and not transgress the limits. So maintain the balance. just one after another verse maintains balance and balance and mizan and mizan and mizan. So there is a underlining of the responsibility to preserve the balance. Other verses on the environment in the Quran include these. No creature is there on earth, nor a bird flying with its wings, but they are nations like you. So just like you consider human life valuable and you consider yourselves communities, they are also communities. Their lives are valuable and they need to be protected. The next responsibility or pillar is the responsibility to read the universe like a book. And this is the two books paradigm, which of course predates Gülen and even Islam by centuries. But it has been echoed in the Quran many times. And this means that the universe and the earth are created books of God. And the Quran and other holy books are revealed works of words of God. Therefore, they are in symphony, they are in harmony, and they should be kept in harmony. Now, this also points to another principle or another observation that in the Quran, God mentions the teaching of names to Adam. Adam was taught names as opposed to angels who did not know the names of things. Now, this can be interpreted to mean that names actually are symbols for things. So Adam had the capacity to think about names, to think about things symbolically. So symbolic thinking, and by consequence, scientific thinking is actually a capability and responsibility of human beings. So human beings, by studying the nature, by understanding the nature, they are able to appreciate God in a way that was not possible even for angels. So again, a capability comes with a responsibility. If you have that capability, that means you're responsible to use that capability to understand the nature, to understand the balance that God has created in the earth. If you don't understand the balance and the ecosystems, how can you possibly protect them? The next pillar Gülen mentions is that the depictions of the gardens of heaven in the Quran are not only meant to encourage believers. They are actually given as models for people, for humans. That means we should try to make our earth, our lives, our world look like heaven. I just wanted to give one example here. The Quran mentions in many verses gardens under which rivers flow. The paradise gardens are described as gardens under which rivers flow. So whenever we design a living space or a workspace, can water be a part of that design, that architecture? And then there is a verse that says, we will settle them under a shade with blessings. And a prophetic saying, when explaining, referring to this verse, that in the heaven there will be a shade under which a horseman will travel for years and will not reach one end of the shade. So even if you don't know this interpretation, can we understand the meaning behind the word shade and strive to have shades, really deep, dark shades in our gardens, in our world? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, والسلام, declared two prohibited zones known as haram in Arabia. Now, this is known, especially the fact that non-Muslims are not allowed to enter the haram area in Mecca is very well known. What is not known is what the Prophet what did he say when declaring these areas? The Prophet said the following. This is the area around the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, and I was happy to learn that Saudi government actually started much bigger places like this. So the Prophet said that no one who believes in God and the last day shall spill blood here in these haram areas. And its plants shall not be plucked. Its wildlife will not be touched, disturbed. And whatever is found here will be returned, will not be kept. So essentially, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was declaring a wildlife preserve in 7th century Arabia. Gülen's emphasis here is that we need to go back and reread the hadith literature, the actions and the sayings of the Prophet, because when we studied his life and the sayings, we often looked at that from the angle of compassion or respect for people and life, peace, keeping, minimizing damage to anything. But if we consider the literature from the point of view of environment, he says we will find so many gems in this literature. So if he declared 2 wildlife preserves in 7th century, definitely humanity ought to do much better in the following centuries. And there are stories of the Prophet, peace be upon him, protecting all kinds of animals, camels, birds, and then even changing the army's path in an expedition, in a military expedition, when they came across the nest of a bird. Which Gülen points out that it's a strategic decision which may end up actually in the failure of your mission, a military mission. And there is a prophetic saying which is often misinterpreted, which says that it is okay to kill harmful animals like snakes and like that. Whereas Gülen says that this is only a permission, it is not encouraged at all. And there is in another prophetic saying or story, Prophet and his friends were traveling, and when they settled in a place to take a break, they saw a snake approaching them. And then upon seeing this, the Sahaba companions picked up some stones and maybe sticks and began walking toward the snake to beat or stone the snake. And the snake realized it and turned back and then escaped. And the Prophet said, "You were saved from the snake's evil or harm, and the snake was saved from your evil or harm." So he described this action of trying to beat or stone the snake as an evil and harm. So the principle Gülen draws from this is that the permission to stop these animals is only for protecting your life. If possible, you should try to evade the situation, escape from the situation, and not kill the animal. There are several verses and Quranic verses and prophetic sayings encouraging planting trees and other kinds of plants. And the other pillar is cleanliness. One very famous prophetic saying says that cleanliness is half of faith. So Gülen interprets this as saying that means if you lose cleanliness, not only in the spiritual sense, but also in the material sense, that means you are damaging and harming your faith. Cleanliness is linked to not only your spiritual faith, but also your material cleanliness with your faith. And I'll conclude with this principle or pillar of integrity. So reportedly the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was visiting Sa'd, a companion, and he was performing ritual washing wudu. And the Prophet said he saw him using a lot of water by a river or lake. And the Prophet said, "Why is this waste? Why are you wasting water?" And the Sa'd was surprised. Can there be possibly waste when we are doing wudu? It is a spiritual washing. Whatever water we use here, can it possibly be waste? The Prophet said, yes. Even if you are performing wudu by a flowing river, you should not waste. Now, if you waste water, use too much water by a river, what's going to happen to the water? This is Gülen's explanation. It's going to go back to the river. So there's no waste actually. But Gülen says you are violating your own belief. You're losing your integrity. You ought to keep your integrity. So your actions everywhere in your life should match with your values, your beliefs. In accordance with Gülen's principles, Hizmet Movement participants founded a foundation for research and protection of the environment. This foundation for a long time published this magazine, which is still available online, Ecology. Notice the spelling, it's not E-C-E-K, Ecology Online. So this has been kept for public education in Turkey for many years. And a high school and a university in Turkey affiliated with Hizmet started International Environmental Project Olympiads, drawing students from all around the world. So I'd like to conclude with these proposals of reviewing our traditions. If you are a Muslim, the Muslim tradition. If you are Hindu or belong to other traditions, your own traditions, to get the dynamics, the pillars, the values that support environmental consciousness. A periodic review of our collective actions, practices from an environmental perspective, and finally, forming coalitions. The basic Hizmet premise is that our roots may be different, but if we agree on the values, we can work together. So Muslims, Hindus, Christians, Jews, members of any world tradition, arriving at the same values from different roots, from different scriptures, but arriving at the same values should collaborate because the world's problems cannot be solved by any nation, any tradition alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.